perhaps starting with methodology, what the study adopts is sort of a number of principles and uses those as lenses under which to analyze the particular laws. And in this particular case, I'm indebted to the work of our colleague here and also the work of Piers House in terms of some of the data that comes up here. I will not go into the international best practice because we're having a conversation among friends here. But just to note that in terms of information, education, and communication, there are different approaches that have been taken. The model law forbids information to minors. The SADC model law, that's the AWARE model law. The SADC model law and the ESC bill have really broad provisions and that contain, for instance, information to as many groups as possible. But again, and this is where one has to be careful, because I know the AWARE model law has taken a lot of flack for being problematic. But in one instance, for Article 7 of that particular law, there is provision that is not reflected perhaps in other laws, which, for instance, talks about communication, information, education for tourists and transit passengers, which I think is something that might bear adoption elsewhere. And in Guinea, for instance, you find the SADC, the AWARE model law position has been adopted. Kenya has an interesting section that provides for not only formal schools, but Section 5 also includes informal, non-formal, and indigenous learning systems. And a number of the laws surveyed, some of them may not be reflected here right now, do provide for some sort of education and information. But in some cases, it's left out completely. The Ugandan bill, which is being proposed for Parliament, totally silent on the question of information and education, which is a serious lacuna. Quickly, in terms of HIV testing, and the question keeps coming up in terms of mandatory testing. The AWARE model law has a general prohibition of mandatory testing, but has some interesting exceptions. For instance, where it talks about where this may be necessary to resolve a marital dispute. And of course one wonders how HIV status may be important in that respect. But also the cases where antenatal checkup, where pregnant woman undergoes an antenatal checkup. And again, as before, a lot of these have found their way to country laws. Togo, for instance, Article 50 of the law requires regular compulsory testing for sex workers. Guinea, and I think the issue came up perhaps in my latest comparative study, Guinea does have a law requiring mandatory testing before marriage. Rwanda, and in Rwanda, it's not an HIV-specific bill, it's a general law, reproductive health bill, still being considered, which also has a similar provision for prospective spouses to undergo HIV testing. So Togo and Rwanda are a little bit unique insofar as even the obligation to test even arises before marriage. But a number of the laws surveyed have provisions for mandatory testing, usually couched as routine. So the word normally used is routine in the head note, but when you read the language, you find the word shall, and which for lawyers, we're aware that you use routine and then you use shall, that is an obligation. It's basically mandatory testing. For instance, the Ghana bill does the same. We have included here for the purposes of time. The question of disclosure and partner notification. Of course, again, international best practice will talk about autonomy and talk about limited exceptions where disclosure can be made in specified circumstances. AWARE, the model law there is quite problematic. Article 26 requires testing centers to disclose to spouses and actually puts a time limit that may or may not be realistic, especially, I'm sure my colleague will talk about the gender implications of who gets tested first and the environment under which disclosure can be made. And so time limits such as this may not really be helpful. In Uganda, we had a case of a lady who was actually killed after disclosing her status to her husband, and so there are issues there. But this Article 26 has actually been adopted by a number of West African countries. So Mali, Mauritania, Guinea-Bissau, and Guinea, in their laws, you find the same duty to disclose to the spouse or regular partner as soon as possible, and the time limit is actually six weeks. Rwanda has something similar. It has Article 17 that in the reproductive health bill that allows the medical doctor to disclose, and the word used there is necessary. And the Uganda bill also has similar language. So a lot of difference given to medical doctors. A lot of scope, which is really problematic insofar as a better way would have been to allow some sort of judicial inquiry so as to balance the rights. Because again, as always, you have two rights here. You have the rights of the person who has living with HIV and the rights of the other person to know, the right to know really, the right information. And so there are challenges there. The question of key populations, vulnerable or marginalized groups, is also one that bears analysis. The Aware Model Law has some language that talks about women and children, but it doesn't really have provisions that, so it appears in the preamble and elsewhere, but in terms of substantive provisions that would protect, for instance, women and children, silence. But it does mention the need for information to prisoners. The SADC law and the EAC bill are particularly progressive. They mandate the governments to pay special attention to vulnerable and marginalized groups. And Alan has told us the debates that went the language in Section 38 and Section 2. And so there's an attempt in the SADC model law and the bill, in the East African sense, at least to have some provision there. In terms of country best practices, national laws, some national laws have actually gone further. For instance, Madagascar talks about condoms in prisons. The law in Togo does protect for protection of women against sexual violence. I might mention in Uganda there's now a Domestic Violence Act that also will have implications here. Mauritius, as already heard in the morning, does contain harm reduction measures, but in terms of the general law, there's conflict there. And this is actually the position elsewhere, because even in the countries where you have some sort of harm reduction provisions, you then have a penal code that, whereby put together, there's a challenge still on the medical worker who would seek to perform such services. Now, in the morning, and I think this whole session, and since 2005, and perhaps earlier, the recognition that human rights have to be at the center of any HIV response. And so the question is, how far do the laws, or the HIV-related laws, provide for human rights being at the center of HIV responses? And there, sort of a mixed picture emerges. In the Aware Model Law case, there is some sort of language in the preamble, but of course, when you get down to it, you find quite strange provisions in the model law that might not live up to the stated objective of the Aware Model Law. In the SADC case and ESC, you do have really a strong human rights focus. It's sort of throughout the SADC Model Law and throughout the ESC bill, you do find protection, promotion, and fulfillment of human rights. Interesting examples at the national level, you have Niger, which has an anti-discrimination law. It's quite progressive. It talks about healthcare, employment, social security for persons living with HIV, even health insurance, which has been a very key issue, emerging issue. And if you contrast that with Burundi at the bottom, it's almost the flip side, because Niger is saying persons living with HIV have the right to health insurance. And in Uganda, this is really a challenge, because a lot of time you find health insurance providers saying, using the language, you say HIV is a pre-existing condition that will not allow us to insure you. Now, Burundi says, weighs on the side of the health insurer and says, under Article 39, it grants the insurer the right, and the language there is to know all necessary information. We go to Niger, there, and so you have these sort of two extremes. Burundi saying the health insurance provider has the discretion to refuse, and Niger saying sort of the opposite. Kenya, a very interesting case in Kenya, where beyond providing for rights, it has Section 25 that establishes an equity tribunal. And I know the tribunal is in place. I know rules of procedure have been made in terms of starting work. That's another matter. But that I think is a key best practice that we might want to think about for our country. The key, one of the major issues has been around criminalization of HIV transmission. The Aware Model Law has very broad language. It talks about reckless and even covers clumsy transmission, and very, very broad. SADC Model Law and EAC Bill have a silent on that. They don't criminalize injection transmission. They have left it to the general penal law of the states. Kenya has had Section 24 of the HIV Act that criminalizes willful and reckless transmission, but I'm aware that in that particular country, this section has been suspended. I don't know whether that has been lifted. So,
no, it's in operation.
It's now in operation.
But it's been challenged.
It's been challenged and so forth. So right now, it's operational. Okay. In Sierra Leone, you have the Kenya position, and we've been noting that the Aware model law influenced a number of the laws that came out in the region. In this respect, though, Sierra Leone did not follow the model law, but actually followed Kenya, apparently. And so they have something similar to Kenya, but then go ahead to even include mother-to-child transmission and criminalize a mother who would, through breastfeeding or otherwise, transmit HIV to her. Yes, this is actually the picture. The heavy hand of the law. Togo has similarly broad provision, so it actually it mandates every person to use male or female condoms in all risky sexual relations. Of course, that's not defined, but the obligation is to use condoms. And Article 13 then stops or prohibits persons living with HIV to have unprotected sex. And this is regardless of whether they have disclosed their status, and regardless of whether the other party may also have HIV. And so it seems to be an overbroad provision. Article 53 also talks about, then has a general provision that talks about, makes it criminal to have unprotected sex with the intention of transmitting or any other activity. Oh, that's very interesting. Or any other activity to willfully spread the virus. Very broad. The number of examples which I'm not going into for purposes of time, but for instance, Benin, unprotected sexual relations without disclosing their status, and a number of examples. Malawi also follows the Togo example, the Sierra Leone example, insofar as the proposed law, the bill that is being discussed in Malawi, would also have HIV, would criminalize transmission from mother to child, as is the case in Mozambique. So Sierra Leone seems to have influenced a number of other countries. Now, as I said, this is a quite preliminary survey, and the intention is to really go deep into the laws, each of the country-specific laws, go into the HIV-related laws. Look at the constitutions, for instance, the reproductive bills, if any, the Penal Code Act, the case law, and try to come up with some sort of general sense of the features emerging in Africa. But in terms of what is emerging from the survey so far, is that the regional laws, for instance, even the model ones, especially the Aware and SADC, are already having an impact on the national laws. The Aware model law has had a direct, you can almost read the language in terms of the West African countries' laws. Guinea-Bissau, the law in Guinea-Bissau replicates the model law almost word for word. Niger, Mali, and Togo replicate the model law on partner notification and disclosure, and in a number of the laws you find language taken from the Aware model law. And what I don't mention there is also sort of a cross, as we said, Kenya influencing Sierra Leone, Uganda borrowing from Kenya, and so forth. And so you have that sort of comparative approach being taken by parliaments, and therefore it's important to have every country try to come up with the best law they can, because normally the neighbors, I know we're being told about time. I'll quickly close. But I'm saying a number of the national laws don't reflect international best practice. So there's a challenge there. And part of it has been the problem with Aware and challenge from there. And so it just becomes obvious that a number of the laws in Africa have not, or are not designed to promote effective response, but actually would also serve as drivers of the epidemic. Challenges in the study, of course, the difficulty accessing primary texts, because parliaments being what they are, normally the disclosure, for instance, on the websites, it's a little bit difficult to find primary texts of those, but this is something we're working on. And this is perhaps something that the partners in this room for each of the countries can assist with. And I think that's something that Yanaso can take up in terms of knowing who is here who can assist with the primary text. But another one is the constant change, amendments. Of course, it's a good thing, but the amendments in the laws make it difficult to keep track. And the study is limited in time, and especially the bills. In Uganda, for instance, my colleague has pointed out, every week the bill changes. So you have a meeting next week, on Friday something totally different. And so it's difficult to keep up. Another one is, of course, what is lost in translation. For instance, Section 18 of the Aware Model Law, for instance, the provision establishing capacity testing of pregnant women in prenatal care appears in the English version, but is missing in the French version. So challenges also in terms of the languages there. And of course, resource and time constraints also come in there. I have to acknowledge the importance of the work of Patrick Eber I'm sure you recognize that work there. And Richard Pierce House, very important study done in 2007 from the Canadian HIV/AIDS Legal Network, and a number of other work that has come out of UN and United. Thank you very much.